Hi, everybody.
Wonderful. So we're going to do a little switcheroo. I'm actually Stephanie, and this is Stacy.
I'm actually Stacy. Stephanie with the Trade Desk, Stacy with PepsiCo.
Exactly. So I'm Stephanie DeSantis, GM of Client Development at the Trade Desk, and I'm really excited to be here with Stacy Taffet, SVP of Brand Marketing at PepsiCo, to discuss how she's driving transformation with her teams to meet the evolving needs of the consumer today. And so for those of you unfamiliar with the Trade Desk, we are a programmatic platform for buying advertising, and PepsiCo is one of our key partners, known for embracing data-driven strategies and a forward-thinking mentality to everything that they do. So I think there's a lot to learn from today's discussion, specifically how Stacy and her team are embracing a challenger mindset to drive meaningful connections with consumers across her brand portfolio. So with that, let's get started. Stacy, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at PepsiCo?
Happy to. Hi, everybody. It's so lovely to be here and see you all. I am 17 years with PepsiCo, which sounds like a very long time. Every time I say it, it makes me feel very old. But it's been a wonderful ride with the company. I've managed brands across a lot of different categories, snacks, beverages, and done a number of different marketing functions. And the role I'm in today is actually really cool because I get to think about the future. And so I'm in a role that looks across the whole portfolio, the whole beverage portfolio, and looks at transformation, capabilities, innovation, the future of media, content, and all the different functions that are going to fuel our portfolio as we go into the future. So it's been really exciting.
Thank you for sharing that. That's incredibly impressive path at PepsiCo. So I wanted to start us off with a few questions on the media landscape. As everyone here knows, the media ecosystem has been a space of constant change. Consumer attention has gotten increasingly fragmented with the rise of premium video on CTV, the expansion of social media channels, and the explosion of audio, just to name a few. So Stacy, how has PepsiCo evolved its marketing approach to keep pace with this rapidly changing landscape?
Yeah, I'm sure you guys have been hearing about this all day, and the reason I have a job that has transformation in its title is because the pace of change is just absolutely staggering. So I would say over the course of my career, I just never would have predicted that we'd be in a place where the way to build a brand is so fundamentally different than it was even 5-10 years ago. And so it can be overwhelming on where to even start, right? When there's the pace of change is so dramatic. We've chosen a couple of areas where we think we can have the most impact and really lean in and do things differently. So the three areas, the first is thinking about the whole ecosystem, right? So I feel like if I had a nickel for every time someone said full funnel, I'd be a very rich person. But it's that concept of making sure every consumer touch point, no matter where you are in your consumer journey or where your consumer is in their journey, has a purpose. And we're being really thoughtful about how all of those touch points work together. So that's been a huge work stream, and I can talk more about that. The second is personalization. And within that ecosystem, what are the capabilities and tools that we need to ensure that we have the exact right message and the right brand meeting each consumer need at the moment of at the right moment. And then the last is relevance. I think over time, as we've thought about driving awareness at the top of the funnel and then performance marketing and really we may have missed a little bit, or I feel like we have missed a little bit in terms of really driving the most relevant connections with our consumers. And so we've done a lot of work to make sure we're clear on how to do that, and what are the right ways, where are the right places to drive investment to really build relevance. And so those are the three kind of areas where we're investing in, we're driving big change, and we're transforming.
To build on that, can you share some examples of successful campaigns that have leveraged those factors that you just spoke of?
Yeah, I mean, it's all a journey. I think one that touches on all of them is with the brand Gatorade. So we've had a direct-to-consumer piece of our business on Gatorade, but this year we relaunched our direct-to-consumer part of the business, along with a platform called Gatorade ID, and it's all about personalization. And so we're starting to build out an entire ecosystem for the athlete with this brand, where in the past, we sold sports drinks. Now we're really trying to fuel athletes across everything that they do and everything they put in their body. And so this has a lot of benefits, right? We're selling personalized water bottles. We're doing collaborations with athletes and capsule collections with merchandise. And through all of that, we're collecting data. And then we are able to know a lot, not only about the athlete and their body and what they need, but who their favorite NFL team is. And many, many ways that we can customize our marketing and really build a relationship with our consumers over time. People tend to come into the Gatorade brand when they're youth athletes. That's when we get adoption. And so if we can start to build relationships because we have that connection with them, it allows us to have a much more productive relationship with that buyer for a long period of time.
Thank you for that. I want to shift gears a little bit. Given the shift in the ecosystem, the role of the brand manager has had to change over time to meet the needs of the consumer. In order to build meaningful connections, marketers must understand when, where, and how their audiences want to interact with their brands. But at the same time, marketers also have to focus on balancing the requirements of the business to drive growth. So can you talk a little bit about this dynamic and how the role of the brand manager has evolved over time, and maybe speak to some of the skills that you feel those brand managers need now to be successful in their roles?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot, and whether you say the brand manager or the CMO, I think I think the marketing department needs to have data scientists, social anthropologists, amazing storytellers, growth architects, GMs, and you kind of, when you're you're leading a department, you kind of have to have a little bit of everything. And to be honest, it's why I love this field as much as I do, because how cool that we get to do all of those things. And to really be great at marketing, you need to be great at all of those things. So I think it's kind of up to the department and the size to figure out, do you have specialists in all those fields? Do you try and build brand managers that can do all of those things? The way we're thinking about it is we're starting to build more expertise and more specialists into the organization to help more of the marketing generalists and the senior leadership team build capability in all of those, right? So as we think about our leadership team, we're knowing enough to be dangerous about all of those things, but then we have specialists in sort of each area. And I think that's going to continue to evolve, but really having left brain, right, like expertise across all of that, I think is going to be critically important.
That makes sense. So just to build on that a little further, the end goal of marketing is obviously to drive business impact. So how are you ensuring that marketing's value is understood and appreciated with your senior leadership at PepsiCo?
Yeah, I think in CPG and at PepsiCo we're blessed because this is an industry that marketing has had a seat at the table, for many, many years. But I do think we have to continue to earn that, and I think across every single industry, you have to continue to earn that seat at the table. So a few things. One, really demonstrating how marketing is a growth driver, I think is the most important thing, and so. It's really hard to measure. This is, one of the things we struggle with is I heard the tail end of the last conversation. If you're not looking at sales that week and you're really thinking about building brands for the long term, it's really, really hard to measure. But what we do is we identify the KPIs we want to move. That could be penetration, it could be brand equity, it could be a number of different things. We have a plan to measure, and then we enlist the CEO support and the CFO support. And we bring them along on the journey, and we say, here's how we're going to measure this. This is the investment we're making. And we sit down together as a leadership team with those functions and review how we're doing. And if we're not meeting the KPIs, then we invest in something else, and we change that. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I think it's really important, at least in the industry I'm in, for our marketers to have a general manager mindset. So the marketers need to understand how we make money, how the products are made, and because we really make sure our marketers build that capability, I do think they're respected in cross-functional rooms, and I think that's critically important. That you need to show that you understand the business and the role that marketing and growth plays in that business.
I love that, the general manager mindset. That's so true. So I want to talk a little bit about brand building and transformation. let's shift our focus to talking about effectively engaging with your consumer. Given this increasing fragmentation of consumer attention, how do you ensure that PepsiCo's iconic brands remain relevant and resonate with a diverse set of audiences?
I think the first thing is that no matter how fragmented the landscape is and how many touch points there are, your brand needs to have a point of view that is consistent no matter where it shows up. I think that's the basics of brand marketing, and I fundamentally believe that that's true. How it shows up, how that point of view shows up to be as contextually relevant and drive as much relevance as possible, I think that's the piece that needs to change, depending on who you're talking to. So an example I actually shared earlier, but I think is relevant here, our brand Pepsi plays in food culture. You know, the cola category, cola goes great with food, Pepsi goes great with food. And so it's really authentic that Pepsi shows up in places around food. But that could be pretty generic. And the way that we actually tell the story of how Pepsi kind of makes your food better and the whole experience better varies depending on the audience you're talking to, the geography you're in, the type of cuisine you might be talking to, the consumer you might be talking to. One of my favorite things we did this year was so we're an NFL partner, and one of our partner teams is the Bills. I heard earlier we were talking about the Bears, but this story is about the Bills. So we spend a lot of time, in that market, understanding that fandom, that community of people that loves the Bills. And, Buffalo is also the home of buffalo wings. And we started seeing that, hey, people were putting buffalo sauce in the weirdest things up there. And so we launched a campaign with Josh Allen where we made Buffalo Pepsi. It was a little bit of buffalo sauce in a Pepsi. Tastes like a Bloody Mary. It's like unbelievably delicious. And it really caught on. And it was just a way to talk about food culture and Pepsi's role in it with a community of people that were passionate about, in this case, football and their community.
Given that you're going to market in so many channels, how are you maintaining brand consistency across of that variety of channels? That's obviously a big challenge.
Yeah, that's a huge challenge. So I actually think one of the biggest challenges is, in CPG and at PepsiCo, we move around roles a lot. And that's awesome. That's why I've been with PepsiCo as long as I have, because I've had a lot of different roles. The challenge is everybody wants to put their stamp on a brand, right? And reinvent what it's about. And one of the ways that we've tried to change that culture is by actually providing incentives to not reinvent the wheel. So we are celebrating brand managers that actually build on what has happened before them and taken the story to the next place versus rewrite the entire story. And that was a really big cultural shift. But I think, we're starting to see that it is a massive detriment to a brand if we don't have consistency over time. And then, so that's over time. And then across channels, I think it's as simple, this sounds kind of stale, but like toolkits and brand books and, having the right collaboration and wiring plan across every single touch point, that's been shown to work for us.
Do you mind me asking, you mentioned incentives so that they don't change the brand, shift the strategy too much. What does that look like?
Yeah, it's just the way that we recognize and celebrate people. So we have awards internally, and we've built awards based on that, and even informal recognition and town halls, and we celebrate stories of success and failure, and it's often around the people that have really resisted the urge sometimes to change things for the sake of it.
That's really wonderful. I've never heard of that. I want to talk a little bit about innovation. So obviously PepsiCo is known for its long history of introducing innovative products and campaigns. How do you think about fostering a culture of innovation within your marketing team?
Yeah, one of the things, another thing I love about the company is the heritage, especially on the beverage side, of what we call the challenger mindset. And, the history of Pepsi is it's the challenger. It was always the challenger brand to Coke. And that having that place in the marketplace actually had a huge impact on the culture within the company. And when we say challenger mindset, it is about innovation. It's about pushing boundaries, taking big swings, being disruptive, Roger Enrico, one of our CEOs, wrote a fantastic book, if you haven't read it, called The Other Guy Blinked. And he talks about big changes to big things. And that's really what the PepsiCo culture has been about. And so what that means is in practice, we pick our things. We do a lot of test and learns and have a measurement plan in place so that if we fail, we can react and move quickly. But we're not afraid, for a big company, we're not afraid to try to do things differently and to transform.
Can you talk a little bit about how you empower your people to take those big swings and fail fast?
Yeah, it all comes from the top and again from the culture. So our CEO down has really set an environment where there's a safety net within reason, right? Everyone's not out on their own doing all sorts of crazy disruptive things. But when there is good business rationale and good data and insight to lead us to make a decision, to take a big swing or do something differently, there is support all the way up through the organization. And if it's a failure, we talk about what we learned, we capture that, we actually celebrate taking the risk, and we move on, and we never make the same mistake twice. That's important.
I was going to say, that sounds like it is very important. That's a good segue into our next question. So obviously part of being innovative is looking at ways of working differently across the organization. So can you talk a little bit about how you've shifted your marketing team structure to address the changing needs of the business and the industry?
Yeah, I think this comes back a little bit to where I started earlier on the role of the brand manager, the CMO. Over time, I think we used to live in a world where it was a brand team, they did everything. They bought the media, they did the creative, they launched the new products, they did the insights, and everything has become so nuanced and so technical in many ways that you can't ask the brand manager or the brand team to do all of that. So we've actually evolved to a structure where we have brand teams that have breadth and are responsible for the growth of the business and managing the overall business and the brand communications. But then we have centers of excellence and experts across media, data, insights, innovation, sports, et cetera, where we have people that are truly experts in those fields, and they work with our brand teams to make sure that we're tapping into the right technology, the right partners, building the right capability, so that we're on the front foot in all of those functions and not constantly trying to get ahead that way.
That's
great.
great.
A little bit of a different structure.
Thank you. Can we just get a quick check on time as we're rounding into our last question? We're good? Okay, 5. Great. So this is a great...
well managed. 5 minutes.
Amazing. Can you, for the marketers in this room looking to drive more transformation with their teams, what advice would you give them, and where do you think they should start on this journey?
Yeah, I'll tell you where we started. So we started with the consumer. So we went and we did some consumer work to really understand what were the most influential places that we could put our dollars. So we did like a whole touch point and channel analysis to say where are the places that are highly, highly influential in driving decisions in our categories, and where are we behind or where are we ahead? And it helped us understand where might we be missing the boat. And from that, then we picked those big 3 things, right? The ecosystem, personalization, relevance, and double-clicked a little bit more on what exactly those meant for us. And so I would say, try and get a sense for where your change efforts can make the biggest impact, and just pick a few things based on what you think is going to move your business, based on all the data you have and all the insight you have. Don't try to do all of it. You can't do all of it. There's every day I feel like I'm overwhelmed by the amount of things that I think we need to continue to evolve, but you're not going to be able to do all of it. So pick a few things and then have a measurement plan against those things. So if you're going to undertake a big change, you have to know if it's going to work. And so thinking about a measurement plan, potentially testing your way into a couple of things if they're really, really big changes, I think that's a smart way to do it too. And then the last thing comes back to the part about marketing having a seat at the table. Enroll the organization and your cross-functional leadership team. So if you're going to do something different, you're going to take on a new way of marketing, Obviously, the reason is to drive more growth. It's really, really important that you bring your team along on the rationale, the context why, but that you also bring the CEO and the CFO along so that you can fund the endeavor. I think those are the important things.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us today.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, everybody.